So this is Ben Shapiro reacting to an anti-Israel TikTok account showing she's going to open this book now, which is like a map from the 1800s, and it's called Palestine, showing the map of the Holy Land, trying to basically say the Jews have no connection to the land and make some brilliant, profound points. Well, Ben responds with some important facts. Have a watch.
Ooh. Wait, no. You mean that it was called Palestine by the Romans in 136 CE in order to mock the Jews? And that doesn't mean that there was ever a Palestinian state there because you are ignorant and stupid, young lady? For literally decades, Palestinians referred to Jews living in the area because it was called Palestine after the Philistines by the Romans to mock the Jews. But if you don't know history and you're a moron, then you just open a book and like, I know things now. I mean, I was pretty clear that she didn't know things just based on the decor of her room over there.
Amy,
I have to say that while this is worth, making these points, the truth is that many people think this. Many people think that the Jews took the land of Palestine from the Palestinians. And it's so important that people get clarity on this because it's such a widespread misconception. People need to know and have clear, and especially those in the pro-Israel camp need to absolutely be clear about this. Number one, the Jewish people are the ancient, historical, biblical owners of the land. They're the ones who are descend from that territory, and it is a Jewish land. And far earlier than there was this word Palestine used, it was called the land of Judea. There was the kingdom of Israel there. And we have the archaeological evidence to prove it. We have the, textual evidence, historical. It's so clear, and this is so important, that the Jews never severed their connection from the land. They were forcefully displaced, but they always maintained a presence there and always wanted to return there. And it was renamed Palestine by the Romans, as Ben said, Syria Palestina. And Palestine was in reference to an enemy of the Jews, and it was like created to humiliate them, that name. And then you have the Arabs, who are now referred to as Palestinians. They conquered the land. There was the Islamic conquest in the 7th century, but they were not indigenous to that land. They came from Arabia, and they adopted this term in the 1960s, the Arabs living there, as a ploy, really, to create a narrative that said they're the original inhabitants and that they once had a state there, even though they never had a state there. There was never a state called Palestine. It was always part of a greater empire, or some other country was holding the land. The last sovereign state to be in that land prior to Israel's formation was a Jewish state before the Romans conquered it. And so it's all a ploy, this term, the Palestinians. So Palestine did not refer to a specific, distinct national ethnic group of people in that territory. Jews were referred to as Palestinians too, prior to Israel's creation, when the Jews that were living there. And this was not an ethnic description or some kind of national description. It was just referring to the fact they lived in that region that was called Palestine. But this notion that there's a distinct national movement that just wants national self-determination, just listen to the leaders of the Palestinian cause, both past and present. They've said, we're happy to be part of southern Syria. They see themselves as part of southern Syria, or we could be part of another nation, another Islamic, as long as it's not the Jews running the show. So what's happened is they've had the most brilliant PR campaign, the Palestinian side, creating this flag, creating this identity. But let's be clear, it's not about some genuine original sin that Israel did, where they took the land from an indigenous group of people that just want to have their own state. No, it's not about that. We've got to start listening to them clearly, on their own terms. For them, what it's about is the humiliation of the Jewish people returning to sovereignty in their ancestral ancient homeland. And I suspect part of the reason for that humiliation is, think about it. For many, many centuries, you have the Jews treated as second-class citizens, as dhimmis in Islamic and Arab culture and societies. And Islam is seen as a supersessionist kind of religion where, like, we are the new chosen people of God, the new voice of God, new emissaries of God's will. And the Jews have been rejected, and they're wandering the earth, and they're second-class citizens, they're subservient. So what does it mean the Jews suddenly return to their land, restore sovereignty, restore dignity, and now they're equals? Well, that's humiliating. That challenges some of your theological assumptions about God's relationship with the Jews. Perhaps God never forsook the Jewish people. Well, if that's the case, then you can either respond to that with a sense of reflection, maybe pride that you live in a region alongside the Jewish people and you can collaborate and work together and learn from the Jewish people and find ways in order to serve God better. Or you can say, no, I'm going to be envious, I'm going to be jealous, I'm going to be resentful, and I'm going to resist the Jewish people's divine mission, divine role, which is they were chosen by God to be his voice in the world and to share his Torah with the world. So obviously, if you've got a narrative that says, well, that's not really the case anymore, and now we have a different ideology, a different thing that God's getting on board with, it's very, very threatening. But what we need to see is a theological maturing take place. And yes, part of that has got to be throughout our enemies suddenly having this maturing, but also the Jewish people have to start articulating this. We have to start making more of a theological case. It's all very well talking about our connection to the land through international law and that we're a democracy and all these things. But you know what? That would be very useful if you're talking to a Western world. We're in a deeply religious world, a religious culture. And it's time that we start making the religious case and start really honing into our very divine purpose. We're not there simply to be a nation like other nations. We're not there simply to fit in and be another democracy. We're there to be a Jewish home, a Jewish state that spreads the light of Judaism and the Torah to the entire world. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah u'devar Hashem mirushalayim. That's what we sing in synagogues. It's a phrase that is well known. It means that out of Zion will come forth the Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem. So why don't we do that? Why don't we lean into that?
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.